India is the only nation which is going to add 50 million tons of refining capacity in the next 5 years.
So I would definitely pick up enhanced oil recovery techniques. There are very few companies actually who are doing that in India right now. So from the discovered fields, EOR would definitely be my top priority.
Oil is only one part of the equation. There is a coal in the whole equation. What can we do with coal? How can we use it better? How can we use it greener?
I was talking about coal bed methane. We have a lot of coal reserves, as all of us know, and a lot of deep buried coal as well. So why can't we just exploit it? It's a lot cheaper to exploit compared to conventional oil and gas.
The import dependence on energy is starting to come down or flattening, and it will come down. In city gas, there will be a wave of aggregation, so there is going to be an investment thing. Because at the end of it, people who can source gas better, who can run those operations better, will be able to catch more values.
Kapil sir, I think if I may ask you, would be lovely to understand that why does this problem exist in India? That we are 88% import dependent on oil. I think domestic crude production was 38 million tons in FY12, like about 14 years ago. And it has actually declined to 29 million metric tons, right? What is the problem? Is it a resource constraint? Is it an economics question that certain below certain threshold is not economical to get the oil out within Indian resources? Is it a policy issue?
Point you're trying to make, Suyash, I mean, with this statement I made to a senior bureaucrat a few years back, because we all talked about that India doesn't really have much oil. And my comment to him was, I'm not here to suggest or tell you that we can become self-sufficient in oil and gas.
Can we displace 5%, 10%?
I think so, definitely. Can we get to full self-sufficiency? I'm not sure. Three things are working for us. The government is very supportive. Samudra Manthan is a deep water project which the government is now conceiving and doing bigger investment. The tenders are already out. So this one is just fixing the long term. But we are talking about production which is 7 years away.
If you look at energy security for India, there are multiple dimensions to it. There is a coal in the whole equation. What can we do with coal? How can we use it better? How can we use it greener? There is the whole agri residue. What can we do around that? CBG. Very early stages right now, but it could be game changers. This is something which could be an investment theme for many of you going forward. But the biggest, the way I look at it, is solar. And how do we use it? That is going to be the game changer in India. And if you start planning and do a very concerted approach, then in a few years, you would see the import of energy will start decreasing.
You're facing one of the biggest crises that India has seen. So would love to understand like how does it look from the inside? How is India doing in terms of tackling this crisis, and what is the inside view of things?
Just yesterday we delivered 12.5 lakh cylinders. In the first 9 months it is 1.3 crore cylinders. There was one day when all the news reports were going around. That single day dispatches from our depots were 45% higher than normal. Imagine if you're running 100-bed hospital, maybe you can adjust 105. Ask the hospital to run 145 patients, they will give up. But we delivered 145% of the demand that day, and that resilience has been brought out. 30 दिन में हम 90% तक e-KYC पे पहुंच गए हैं. 97%, 94% of my deliveries happen on online booking right now. This was less than 80% 5 weeks ago. And almost barring 20,000 cylinders of the 12.5 lakhs which I delivered yesterday, 20,000 was the only ones which were given without an OTP. Remaining were, so tightening the system, that is one part of it.
Very important. Otherwise, a lot of it was getting used in commercial spaces.
Since liberalization of India in 90s, the energy demand obviously increased dramatically from around 200 odd million tons in 90s. Import dependence kept on increasing. We had predicted that the import dependence of energy is stabilizing as we speak. If I remember correctly, the year was 26-27, where the curve from upward side will start flattening. And then import dependence will start coming down. The reason behind it is twofold. One, domestic coal. In this period, domestic coal went up from 600-700 million tons a year. I think last year they would have run 1100? 1100 domestic coal. I'm still not counting coal where methane, etc., which are still smaller. The second big ticket is renewable power. 28-29 June last year, if I remember, that was the day when 50% of electricity in India was generated from renewable power. And I was watching at lunchtime in my room, I was just watching the television, and NTPC's chairman was quoted in the news saying that we are finding it difficult to run coal-based plants because renewables are there. So the import dependence on energy is starting to come down or flattening, and it will come down because we are using different forms of energy.
I also wanted to add if you see a lot of our new generation sources, they are all front-loaded in terms of capex and practically have no opex. So basically what happens is over a period of time, just because of the currency, in dollar terms, our energy costs keeps going down.
When I was working for British Gas, a BG group earlier, so I was the signatory to the Queensland LNG or the CNG coal bed methane project. And I've seen what happened to Australia with that. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it went up from 1 million to 100 million in 15 years. And that's a lot of gas. India's total production today is 100 million cubic meters. And we import about 100 million cubic meters. So if we can kind of try and replicate the Australia story in India, you're talking about almost doubling India's production, which will take away quite a bit of the imported gas we have. We have a lot of coal reserves, as all of us know, and a lot of deep buried coal as well. So why can't we just exploit it? It's a lot cheaper to exploit compared to conventional oil and gas.
The sweating the existing assets more, is it pure economics or is it there? I mean, can you have a similar technology curve out there where you can sweat the assets more?
There is, and that's what I think we are focusing a lot on. Like Vikas was talking about, so we are focusing on sweating the existing assets. So when you talk about that, technology comes into play. More than technology, focus kicks in. So what we are trying to tell the government is, and I'm also part of a lot of joint working groups with the ministry, that we should try and apply the 2080 rule. So the large companies, for example, in ONGC or Oil India, should focus on their 20% fields, which gives them 80% production. The balance 80 roughly give only 20% production. And being a large company, and I was part of a large company before he's been part of a large company, all companies tend to focus on their bigger assets, obviously. So what we are trying to suggest to the government that some of these fields which are not in focus, they should be outsourced to somebody like us. And that ecosystem needs to develop. Is it existing today? No, there are very few players in the industry right now. But that space is there and it's evolving fast. So that approach, the focus approach, and we are able to bring technology, the global technologies from the players like Schlumberger's of the world, the Baker Hughes of the world. A combination of those two, we are starting to see results already happening.
Revolution is starting to take place. We have a CBG plant, we are putting up a few more, but I bet 3 years from now you will look at CBG plants, and we back that technology. Why? Think of refining 20, 30, 50 years ago, 100 years ago. People would be mixing things in beakers and all those kind of things to get the results. Now they are automatic process controllers which tell you there. CBG, that whole biogas thing is starting to come at, I would say, it's just on the learning curve down. People are still learning how to handle paddy straw, how to handle different things. In 3-4 years, some people would master. And already in India, the best plants are starting to get 10-11% yields, which starts getting into high single-digit IRRs. And moment it attracts, who's investing in it right now? It's OMCs and some of the Reliance and those kind of companies have invested. But very soon you will find a lot of you would want to say, oh, I want to take a stake. Then suddenly it opens up in a bigger way and attracts more attention. So that could be another revolution which is going to come later and start impacting the availability or the whole energy dependence.
But in that value chain of biofuels, or where you have a feedstock and then you have the technology and then the developer who's kind of investing in the asset, where does the value lie in that?
If you ask me, at this point of time, the biggest value lies in getting to know the technology better or mastering the technology. The people who master that technology are the ones who will create the maximum value in the short run. I run the largest running state-owned plant in CBG. I know how difficult it has been. So the focus, after a lot of exuberance which people had initially, the focus of all the players is to get the unit profitability right. My own plant was literally running on a negative IRR, but I want it to be profitable on its own. I want it to be investable. It started to touch 10% utilization, and which means I can get close to IRRs of almost touching double digits. When these things starts becoming scarce, then people start looking at it, and it's also about when you get momentum. Take CBG itself, the base, the biological route itself. There are people now who are starting to look at, why should I even design the plant? It could be just a modular plant, just plonk the same thing. So industrialize that whole manufacturing. They are at the tip of the learning curve where the costs and all will start falling down. Same what happened with solar 10 years ago, the module cost dropped like anything. City gas business. It will go through the story which the thermal power went in the 2000 to 2010. Everybody and their brother, maybe some in the room, would have also invested in thermal power plants. 10 years later, they all got sold and aggregated. In city gas, there will be a wave of aggregation, so there is going to be an investment thing. Because at the end of it, people who can source gas better, who can run those operations better, will be able to catch more values. Third place where I would say, so you would start seeing valorization of molecules down the line. So all of us will move into value-added sale, but you would see opportunities of investment in the downstream of the first block of petrol, the L2, L3 segment.
But if I was to pick themes, I will look at a recovery from a global perspective is a lot lower. So I would definitely pick up enhanced oil recovery techniques. There are very few companies actually who are doing that in India right now. So from the discovered fields, EOR would definitely be my top priority. And I've seen what happened to Australia with that. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, it went up from 1 million to 100 million in 15 years. We have a lot of coal reserves, as all of us know, and a lot of deep buried coal as well. So why can't we just exploit it? It's a lot cheaper to exploit compared to conventional oil and gas. So if I was to pick, I will pick those two themes